Thank you everyone for being able to come today. Thank you Daniela for being able to host this fantastic event for the behavior and rescue professionals here in the Portland area. I wanted to just jump right in. I'm going to be talking today about early signs, or what I can call early signs of canine anxiety. Talking a little bit about what are some of the more obvious signs, what are the little more subtle signs, show you some videos, show you some photographs, talk a little bit about them, and answer questions at the end of the presentation. A little bit about us. Synergy Behavior Solutions is a behavior-focused veterinary practice. I'm a PhD behaviorist and veterinarian, and so I do animal behavior consultations. We also have a certified professional dog trainer, my business partner, who does behavior modification. We do group classes as well, including reactive rover classes and workshops and seminars. We work with a lot of dogs with various types of behavioral issues, including anxiety, so this is something that we're very familiar with. Now, for those of you who were here last month, some of you may recognize Scott from before. This was taken yesterday. We're in the process of moving into a new facility in Northwest Portland, which is very exciting but very tiring. Why should you care about early signs of anxiety in dogs? For a variety of different reasons, clearly. When working in the welfare rescue type arena, we are often working with dogs where you have very little information about them, very little history. And while the history that is gotten to you from people is very important, it's also really important to pay attention to what the dog is telling you, because what the dog is telling you in that moment in time might be different than the experiences, than what it is that the previous people may have seen or what the previous people may have recognized. So your ability to be able to recognize these early signs are going to help you become a better foster home, or a better shelter, or a better rescue organization, or a better veterinarian, or a better technician, or a better trainer. It improves the welfare of dogs. If you can recognize where it is that a dog is anxious, or what sort of situations in which a dog is anxious, then you can address those issues. You can help those situations. You can make this dog feel more comfortable, and by doing so, improve its overall welfare. The majority of behavior problems are anxiety-based. This is something that has been reported many, many times, certainly something that I've seen in my practice. The majority of aggression cases that I see are based on anxiety. The majority of just problem behaviors are based on anxiety. So the more that you guys can see, the easier the job becomes. The other part that's important about anxiety is that oftentimes anxiety gets in the way of being able to train. If you have a dog who has a lot of anxiety, sometimes that anxiety needs to be dealt with first before training can happen. And that's a really important concept, because training and dealing with anxiety can be two very different things, and we often approach them in two very different ways. The other big reason for thinking about and understanding how it is that dogs have, being able to read and understand dogs' early anxiety signs is for safety purposes. Dogs very rarely bite in an unprovoked manner. The majority of the time they are showing signs that there are things that are concerning them. When they're showing these signs of concern, they'll be signaling, and the earlier that you can see, the earlier that you can identify and recognize these signs of anxiety, the sooner you can address the problem, the sooner you can make the dog more comfortable, and the less likely you are to end up getting bitten, or have somebody else getting bitten, or have one of your volunteers getting bitten. There's some physical responses to stress and anxiety too, which I just want to jump into for a moment. Because anxiety is an emotional response, but there is a physiological response that goes with it too. And these are just a few, there are a whole slew of them. But just to touch on some of the basics, these responses, these physiological responses, are preparing an animal for fight or flight. So heart rate goes up, blood pressure goes up, their respiration rate goes up, muscle tone tenses up, pupils dilate, various hormones are released into the system that cause the body to become ready to burn the energy, get going where they need to go to escape the situation. So that's for a short-term stressor. You can imagine for long-term stressors, if these keep going on and on and on, that can also become problematic for a dog as well. So talking about fight or flight, one of the things to keep in mind is that most dogs, when given a choice and given an opportunity, are going to want to avoid conflict rather than to become aggressive. So when given the choice of fight or flight, most dogs are going to want to fight or flee. So when I talk about body language, or when I'm talking about anxiety or fear signs, I'm talking about body language. So what is the posture of the dog? What is the dog's overall face doing, ears doing, tails doing? Oftentimes these body language components are related to appeasement behaviors. And when I say appeasement behaviors, I'm talking about social behaviors that are interacting, or that govern interactions between dogs. And these interactions help diffuse tensions between two dogs. So if two dogs come up, or a dog and a person, if they come up and there's some tension there, they will show different behaviors to each other, different appeasement behaviors, and then that diffuses the situation so they can go on their way. Again, they don't want to fight, so they try to give each other reasons to not fight. And this is what happens with people too. If a dog is feeling uncomfortable about a situation, they're going to show appeasement behaviors for as long as they possibly can until they either can get out of the situation, or if they feel like they can't, then they might start becoming aggressive about it. These anxiety-based behaviors oftentimes serve to make the animal smaller. I say serve to, not because I think the animal is cognitively thinking, I have to make myself small, but that's what happens when they crouch down and they tuck up, which I'm sure that many of you have seen when a dog is really frightened by something. Gets down lower to the ground. It also is a reflection of the body's physiologic response. So, for example, I mentioned before, dilated pupils. You'll often see that. That's something observable that you all can see too, in a situation where there's a dog who may be starting to get more upset or more concerned. I want to take a moment to go over signs of fear that probably you're all very familiar with, but I just want to go over it anyway. I call them the more obvious signs. So a lot of times when people say the dog was afraid, the things that they think about are the ears going back, the tail kind of tucking down, maybe crouching down a little bit. That's your sort of standard scared dog. This little guy here is scared of thunderstorms. That's what his photo is about. And some of the things that you might notice that he's showing is his ears are really flat against his head, so he's doing the ears back. His pupils are very, very dilated, so he's showing that physiologic response that I was telling you about. He's panting really heavily. So panting is one of the more subtle signs that sometimes is not recognized as anxiety, but he's panting really, really heavily. And the corners of his mouth, which are called the commissures of his lips, are pulled back very tightly. His whole face is very tense. So looking at him, does he look like a dog who's kind of worried? Yeah? Okay, good. That's what we're looking for. How about this guy? What does he look like?
He's got his tail up between his legs. Mm-hmm. He's kind of like this.
Yeah, exactly. I like that. It's like, yeah, so his tail is tucked between his legs. His front paws are kind of tense, ready to move if needed. His hind legs are also very tense. He's looking up and his ears aren't flat, but they aren't really perked either. They're kind of sideways. So I would say that he's not fully comfortable also. And one of the things I said before about dog body language, one of the components of it is them kind of trying to get small and be as harmless and non-threatening as possible. If you're plopped on your back, that's about as far down as you can go. So this is a dog who's feeling a little bit concerned and threatened by the camera person. So all of you saw those really easily, which is great. And now I want to jump into some of the signs that people don't always recognize, or they don't always know to look for. One of the most obvious ones, or excuse me, one of the most common ones that are out there, or which I've seen, is the tongue flick or the lip lick. So this little dog here, you'll be able to see his tongue is flicking up across his nose. Other signs include yawning and hypersalivation or drooling. If you have a dog who's drooling excessively, those are also some anxiety signs that, if not early, are subtle. This video is going to show a combination of these different signs. So this is a dog who is having another dog walk up to him, and he's trying to diffuse the situation, showing these signs. Or she. The lip lick, the yawn, smacking a little bit, another lip lick. The ears are back in her case. Licking again. So it doesn't have to be something prolonged, and oftentimes it can be very, very quick. But this is something that's definitely important to watch, because especially if you're working with a dog that you don't know much history behind, then watching that dog and seeing, are they licking their lips or flicking their tongue when you're coming up to say hello, if you're coming to pet them, if they're walking beside another dog, if you are walking beside a garbage can. What are the times that they're showing these signals that they may be concerned? Another real common sign that we see is called whale eye. So where do you think this dog's concerned about something. Where is that dog? Where is the thing the dog is concerned about?
Over there, that's right.
So, it could be that he's off to his right and he's really, really looking away. What's another possibility?
Oh, then he doesn't want to look at it. Yeah.
Yeah. If he really doesn't want to look. Another possibility is that it's over there.
Yeah.
And he's kind of doing that whole like, all right, I'm looking sideways at you, but I can't quite turn all the way. In either case, whether there's something over here and the dog is looking away, or if it's something over here and the dog, scary, and the dog is looking at it sideways like that, then in either case, that's a dog who's trying to make a decision on what do I do at this point. And oftentimes, the whale eye look comes in conjunction with some freezing. Not all the time. But freezing is where the dog might be going along doing something, and then something makes it worried, and it just freezes up. Okay? That is another sign, that's another signal when I talk to clients. I say that's sort of a decision-making time for the dog, because if the dog is starting to freeze, then they're trying to decide, okay, what do I do at this point? And sometimes dogs, when they freeze up, they don't know that they can get out of the situation. So this is a video that I'll show you, which has, I thought, a good example of a freeze. Pay attention to the dog on the ground.
Oh.
So what were some of the signs that you guys saw?
Freezing.
What's that?
Well, definitely froze.
Mm-hmm.
Doing a little whale eye.
Yeah, so she was on her side. She was kind of happy, kicking around, and then she froze up. And then she looked her sideways, did the whale eye. What else?
Stiff legs.
Okay, good. So the legs were really stiff. She actually kind of pulled her legs in towards her body a little bit. The other thing that it may have been a little bit difficult to see is right before she lunged, she actually stopped breathing. So while we have a physiologic response where the respiratory rate increases, oftentimes when things get really stressed, breathing stops. And if you can imagine, this is kind of how people are too. If something really scares you, you kind of go and hold your breath for a second. Or if you get tense about something, you hold your breath and everything tightens up. So this is what's happening with this dog too. So let's just take a quick look at that again. So she's happily kicking around, and then she sees the other dog coming up. And freeze now, looks away slightly, licks the lip, then freezes, stops breathing, and then lunges. Now, while Sometimes people would say that bite was unprovoked, that she was just trying to be friendly, he wasn't trying to do anything, he was just trying to smell her. But she was giving warning signals to that dog about 5, 10 feet away. You're coming close to me and I'm uncomfortable about it. So those are the types of things that you look for. Imagine if it was a dog like this and you were coming and the dog reacted that way. Probably when the dog froze, that would be a good time to turn around and leave. Imagine also, let's say that this dog is a dog in a foster home and they have kids in the house and the kid's toddling up, the dog freezes. The child doesn't know what that means. They're going to probably keep right on toddling. And you can see how it is that dogs can lead to child bites just because the kids are not reading the body language that's there. But we all love dogs, that's why we're here. And oftentimes we want to express that love. And especially when I've talked to a lot of people in the foster rescue arena, animal welfare arena, I have noticed that there's a lot of hugging and kissing of animals going on. So I wanted to show you another video which I thought really kind of exemplified things to look for. When a dog is uncomfortable about a situation, they will often avoid. So avoidance is they can either move away or they can lean away. They can also have a lack of engagement. And what I call a lack of engagement is, for example, if I come to a client's home and the dog comes up and greets me, and then after a sniff or two, the dog walks away and lies down 20 feet away with his back turned to me. That's a dog who is not interested in engaging. Okay? So a situation where maybe you would expect a dog to be a little bit more interested, most of the time I would expect that the dog might be kind of interested, kind of hanging out, wanting a little bit of attention. If the dog comes up and then walks away and isn't showing any interest, then that is what I consider a lack of engagement. But this video I really like because it shows a few different dogs and is showing their reaction to being hugged. And hugging is a really threatening thing for dogs because we come in, we're doing this, and we're coming right on top of them, which is threatening. We're making direct eye contact, which is threatening. We are coming front to front, which is threatening. So all of these things are really threatening. Now, I'll warn you in advance, none of these dogs are going to be aggressive, so you don't need to hold your breath wondering. They all seem to have a comfortable relationship with their person. But I do want you to think about whether or not this dog is actually enjoying it. She actually pulls out some things that she sees from an anxiety standpoint. So dog 1 seems to enjoy a hug, quite relaxed and not frozen. Staying close after being released. So I'm hanging out, nudging for more affection. So I'm just reading the subtitles on there. Did do a little bit of a shake at the end. Dog 1 is still hanging around. Dog 2 is not so excited about it. So you see the leaning away, some freezing. Lip lick calming signal, which is another name for appeasement behavior. Stretch and shake off, and then moving away. So you see there's a big difference between the first dog and the second dog. So again, freezing. The frantic tail wag, you might be able to see down in here. It's a really low, really fast tail wag. Lip lick and shake off. He kind of hangs out a little bit. So this is another dog. We're freezing, averted gaze, moving lips, blinking, shaking, and this one moves away. And freezing, kind of turning the head, saying, oh gosh, I need to deal with this, and then moving away. So far only 2 of these dogs have sort of stayed around afterwards. And only 1 seemed to really enjoy it at all. Lip licking, and leaving. Now this dog is not moving away, and is actually leaning into her a little bit. and then hanging out. So were you able to see the difference in how, especially with those border collies, sort of how they were able to, how the different dogs were reacting in different ways? And even the first dog, I'd say, was maybe not 100% comfortable with it, but certainly much more comfortable than the other ones that were there. Something else that I see as a sign that clients report before they start having a lot of issues with their dogs, or before they realize or recognize that they're having a problem with their dog, is that they may report that their dog is having overexcited interactions with them. So you may see this, so an example of what you may see is, for example, if you're taking a dog, or if you're working with a client with a dog in a stressful environment, that they're leaping all over the people, trying to get in their lap and trying to climb on them, or they start frantically leaping on other people. Or if it's a situation of, for example, a storm phobia, and the clients are hanging out and the dog's trying to leap all over them, whereas at other times they won't. So you can have increased agitation and increased franticness with interactions, which could also be an indication of anxiety. So keep that in mind, because a lot of times these dogs are labeled as unruly. It may not be that they're unruly, it may be that they're actually worried and anxious, and that needs to be addressed in conjunction with dealing with general manners, or even before, depending on what the problem is. I also want to mention the bow. The bow has often been called a play bow, and we usually do see it in the context of play, but you can see this bow behavior in situations other than play too. And I want to show this little dog, who is clearly worried, but still doing a bow. He loves the camera, and then he walks away. So this person's holding a little baby duck. A real baby duck. And of course, where does the duck go? So you see this dog showing avoidance. The tail is up, the ears are up, but he's still showing avoidance, so we're having some anxiety. And you see now we're having this bow behavior. This is one determined shake. I turn off the sound for these because there's a lot of times just a lot of talking in the background, which I find distracting. So it's really, that's really cute, right? So, what would you say, just watching this little dog, what would you say the overall impression you have is about that dog's feeling about the little duck? What the heck? Yeah. Well, does this dog seem to be comfortable?
No.
No, all right.
But there was also a level of curiosity there.
Yes. There's a level of curiosity, I think, and that's a really important point. Because where I start seeing a lot of this play bow type behavior, the bowing type behavior is where the dog is in a situation of internal conflict, that they're interested in something, but yet they're nervous about it. So they kind of don't know which way to go. And because of that, there was a presenter who described it really nicely, that the bow kind of lets you go in whatever direction that you want. And so this dog was able to bounce forward, bounce back, could bounce to the side if he needed to. There's just a couple of myths that I wanted to see if we could debunk. The wagging tail does not equal a happy dog. So looking at this guy, we see we have a wagging tail. What does the rest of him say?
He will be aggressive, so higher
What the
up.
heck?
Yeah. So, well, what is his body? What are signs that you're seeing in his body?
Well, he's tense,
Okay, he's very tense.
very alert, very.
Protective.
So-
That is
freezing
out at night.
Okay, good. So his body is very tense. He's freezing. He's kind of going in and out from freezing.
Super focused.
Okay, great. Very, very focused. Can you see his mouth?
Yeah.
Can you see his mouth is really, really puckered and really, really tense? And sometimes that can be a sign that you can look for also. If the dog's mouth starts tensing up, then you know that they're getting more concerned too. His ears are kind of flicking back and forth a little bit. It's a little hard to see whether in this particular video is his ears actually back, or is it because of the conformation of his head that his ears aren't looking as forward. But you can certainly see how it's going from the freezing to the wagging to the freezing again. So I wouldn't consider him a happy dog. One of the scariest dogs I ever saw, actually a video of, back when I was working on my PhD, was a video of a Labrador Retriever mix who was attacking his owner, actually, or her owner. And she was attacking the owner, and the dog's tail was wagging the whole time while it was going on. So the tail wag is a symbol, is an indication of excitement or emotional arousal, rather than whether the dog is happy or not. So keep that in mind when you're working with the dogs in your various organizations. So I hear this a lot too. He rolled on his back, so he told me he wanted to pet him. What does this dog say?
Back off.
Back off? Okay. So what are some of the signals that you're seeing? What's the dog doing?
He's trying to get some wailing.
Some whale eye? Okay. So we have some whale eye here. What else do we have? Okay.
Kind of legs.
Yeah, it kind of got the stiff like body going on. Does he look like the stiff legs? Does he look relaxed in general? No. So this is another dog that if I were walking over to and they rolled over like that, that's another situation where I'll just say, all right, you're telling me you don't want me to come any closer? I'm going to go ahead and turn the other direction and walk off. So this is something I tell my clients all the time. Fine is a 4-letter word. Because I hear over and over again, my dog was fine. My dog has always been fine with my baby, and then someone bit. My dog has always been fine walking past other dogs, and then we're being reactive. My dog is fine walking through big crowds, and now we're having a problem. So a lot of times when we're talking about the word fine, it's usually in relation to a dog who has some sort of aggression or reactivity issue, at least in the cases that I see. And so I ask, well, what does fine mean? And usually fine means, well, we're walking along and he's kind of looking at the dog as we go, but he's not barking. Or, you know, he'd kind of avoid the baby but wouldn't actually growl. So it's important to think about when you say your dog is fine or the dogs that you're working with are fine, if you're thinking about it in that context, think of it more in terms of, is the dog tolerating the situation or is the dog actually comfortable? So in that video before of those 4 border collies that I showed you, I'd say that they were all tolerating. But a lot of people who are not familiar with body language would say these dogs are all fine because they're accepting the hugging. It's an important distinction to make because I think this is where one of the biggest problems come up with our understanding of what the dogs are trying to tell us. And then is the dog really fine in that case? So this is a dog named Parker, who's always been a little bit worried. When Michaela was an infant, became anxious. When she became taller, she was more anxious. Scary baby. So she's just giving a disclaimer that I was watching. I was making sure. So the baby is off the screen over on this side. And you can see where this dog's attention is. Baby noises cause an alert reaction. You might be able to see, he doesn't look like he's real happy about it. To the untrained eye, he looks fine, in quotes. Parker moves away. He has the option to move away, so he moves away. And meanwhile, you know, the humans are focusing on the child because the child is so cute. So here's another situation. Parker licks his lips and walks away. It was really quick. again, this dog had the option to be able to go. He knew that leaving was an option. Tight quarters, fewer ways to be able to avoid. So now he's starting to get a little bit more agitated. So remember I was talking about the sort of the more excited interactions? This is kind of what's going on here. Facing and a little too attentive. So we see a agitation level much higher now than in the very beginning. Yes, that was a growl accompanied by additional threat displays. So tongue flick, whale-eyed, tooth display. I think it's important to note that neither my grandmother nor my uncle were aware of any problems. To them, he appeared fine around the baby. But things have gotten better. So you can see how these early signs of anxiety, especially, for example, this last one, these early signs of anxiety, if they didn't have a person who was really involved and really on top of being able to diffuse that situation, how that could have escalated into a problem very quickly. But in conclusion, dogs signal when they're becoming more anxious. They're showing the signs, and we went over what those signals often are. They tend to signal before biting or fleeing. When you're working with these guys, respect what they're saying. If they're showing concern, if they're showing worry about something, respect it and try to figure out what it might be. Avoid creating anxiety through training, through social interactions, because the more anxiety you cause, the harder that's going to be. Things that you guys can do in the rescue and welfare situations especially, but also in the veterinary profession, other animal-related professions, is that you can use this information to interact more comfortably with these animals and more safely with them. And the thing that is a big thing for me, especially in the rescue field, is you can identify those issues that might be problem areas for these animals well before they even get into an adoptive home. You can start seeing, oh, this dog's shying away a smidge. When I reach for him, let's work with that and make that dog feel more comfortable. Oh, when I put on the leash, he's sort of freezing a bit. Let's work on that. So you're all in a really great position to be able to take this information and then to use it in a proactive way. So then these dogs are going to be more comfortable, they'll have good experiences with you, and then in the new homes from there, get even better. A couple of resources that I wanted to tell you about that are online. This is from a great body language of fear in dogs. It's a great little handout that you can download from Dr. Sophia Yin's website. Sophia Yin is a veterinarian and animal behaviorist in Davis, California. I use this a lot with my clients, and it really helps them to visualize what it is that their dogs are doing. On YouTube, a couple of videos which I use with clients frequently is if you look up Zoom Room body language, they have a great video there talking about signs of anxiety but also signs of comfort. So dogs that are comfortable versus dogs who are anxious. So that's a really good resource for staff, for volunteers, foster homes. And if you search for does your dog really want to be petted? That's another example, kind of the lines of the hugging one that we saw, except it's talking about does your dog really want to be petted or not, and how do you work with that or how do you respect that?